I don't have time for this.
You don't have time for this.
I don't have time for this podcast tonight.
Yeah.
But we're going to do it anyway.
Because that's what we do. We make the time. We do the work.
It's been over 2.5 years now.
It's been over 2.5 years. That's crazy.
I cannot believe we've done this every week for 2.5 years.
I can't believe that you have listened to this for 2.5 years.
It's probably not the same 20 people.
I know. It has to have rotated. Anyway, we really appreciate it. And let's just get into it. Here we go.
So I have made it through, I feel like I've made it through finals. I've made it through the worst or the best, I don't know, of summer.
Yeah.
I love everything I'm doing. I can't complain. But it's been a lot.
Yeah.
It's been a lot. It's been everything I asked for. It's been everything I asked for.
I mean, that's pretty great.
It's been like 3, sometimes 4 days a week of water skiing. It's been tons of gigs, tons of great gigs.
Yeah.
It's been leveling up on bass by playing in new demanding situations that I rose to the challenge on.
And I would argue leveling up a couple times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a couple different ways. Yeah. Whew. But the culmination of all this was 4 gigs. I guess one of them was a showcase, but 4 gigs in a row in 4 days.
You still had to work it.
Yeah. At the end of September, 4 different situations. So obviously your preparation for one doesn't apply to the preparation for anything else. So
not much, no.
Whew, so I got done with Sunday, and I am like, I could not stop yawning in my lessons today. I was like, it's not you. I swear it's not you. Anyway, we made it. And now I'm going camping tomorrow morning. I'm leaving it. Well, we have to leave the house at like 6:45 to get over to Suzanne's and drop me off.
Yep. No problem.
You're the best. Yeah. You're like, no problem. That's the middle of the night for me, but no problem.
No problem. Well, what am I going to do? I mean, come on.
I would take you to the airport in the middle of the night if I had to.
Yeah. But you are going on an exciting Utah trip. I think you're going to Utah.
Yeah.
I decided I had no interest in going, so
and I'm glad that you can be honest about that.
Yeah, it just sounds like you guys are gonna.
We're gonna hike and get dirty and go in canyons and stuff.
Yeah, and also I have a ton of work. I can't really take a week off right now.
More importantly,
you're not going for a whole week, but you're going with your good friend Suzanne, who you also water ski with.
Yep, and snow ski with.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And I was in EOA with.
Right.
So we talk business, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys are going to go do that, and I am going to basically use that time to work.
You should get up from the chair a couple times a day.
I do. I have my stuff in the yard, and I have my garden, and,
right.
Yeah, the backyard actually takes quite a bit of keep up.
That is true.
Yeah, it's something. I mean, good gosh. Anyway, so you got a little vacation coming, and I'm hoping you're going to get to rest up. And the Kristens and I we're taking care of all this stuff.
Thank you so much. I trust you guys. I know it's going to go fine.
They'll take care of most of it, but if needed, I can.
Justin's, I'm here for you if nobody else is.
Yeah. If you were wondering who was batting third, it's me. Anyway, let's talk this week. So I'm, of course, recording, producing, finishing up a Christmas album. I will say the one thing that's interesting about that is I cannot play keyboards, really. I can, from being exposed to it my whole life, I can play hymn kind of stuff. Like not really like gospel, like black church gospel, but like churchy hymn stuff. For some reason, I can play that on keys because I just got it drilled into my head for my whole childhood. And so...
Is it coming in handy?
On this project, yeah, because we're doing How Great Thou Art, and I played keys on that, and I'm playing keys on Oh Holy Night. So, like, any of that churchy stuff, like, it's just like my hands just somehow know what to do.
They sure do. I can hear it in the hands.
Yeah.
Like, the fingers just go right where they're supposed to go.
Thanks to Miss Ernestine, the pianist from our church when I was growing up. I just have like all that stuff is just in there somewhere. As soon as I start trying to do it, it just comes out. Like, um, there's just those inversions that are like, oh yeah, that's real churchy inversion. Anyway, that's what I've been doing. You, as you mentioned, had a ton of gigs. Let's start with Thursday. You did a church service on a Thursday. Speaking of church,
Yeah, Journey Church has started doing Thursday services at their main location because they are growing so much. They can't fit everybody into 3 services on Sunday. Plus, gosh, okay, so they have 3 locations.
Yes.
One of them does 3 services. That's the main location. One of them now does 2 services on Sundays. One of them does 1 service, although I think they might have closed that one. I'm not sure. But now they're adding a Thursday service in their main location.
And you said it was like
it was
well
full.
attended.
It was very well attended.
Right. That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't
for them.
overflowing like the Sunday is, but it was real respectable.
I mean, on a Thursday night, that's
yeah. So it's always fun to be with those guys and women. The thing that I will say about it is that my brain was already getting to be so overwhelmed by Thursday that what should have been easy was hard-ish. Like I really, really flubbed in sound check. I also didn't have much time to prepare. This was an exercise. This week, these 2 weeks were an exercise in seeing how little I could prepare and still get by because there just wasn't enough time.
And I would say, in a responsible way, it was an exercise in how little prep you could do because you were trying to push yourself to be like, can I review stuff once? Have my charts.
I tend to over prepare, especially for situations that I feel like I'm maybe the underdog in, or I'm not like I'm around people who are better than me, so I want to really prepare.
Sure.
But there just simply was not the time. Like the amount of time between when I got the music for all these situations.
That's a real issue.
Or these 2 situations, and then had to play it was just so short, and then I had so many other things going on. So the church stuff, I like we talked about last time, I normally make my own charts, but the church stuff, they provide charts one way or another, whether they're number charts or letter charts.
Right.
They provide them. So I'm like, I am just going to download them, even though they're freaking 6 pages long. They're so long.
Yeah, they're not great.
But I was like, rather than make my own, I just have to run through this once, make sure I can follow it, and that I'm going to call it good.
Yeah.
Because these songs are very similar, they're very predictable. So I did that for all 4 songs, and then I got there, and the problem was the songs weren't in my head at all. I didn't remember what they sounded like at all. So I was hanging on, and my brain was not working fast. I feel like I've noticed like a slower processing speed as I've gotten kind of like at the end of my rope here.
Right.
Like I think, where's the 6 in relation to the 1, or where's the A, or which string am I on? And like the answers to those questions are taking longer than they should, given how much I've been playing lately.
Yeah, and that sounds like burnout to me.
Yeah. Anyway, the service went fine. They always seem to love me. I think because I get the tailwind of being a female bass player. Yay!
Well, and you've mentioned too that you throw a little performance in there.
Right, that's true. I feel like aside from the lead singers, I am usually the only musician on stage, putting a little juice on.
Yeah,
on the
doing a
physical
little bit
side
of
it.
A little bit of show.
Just a little. I'm not like attracting attention.
No, I'm sure you're doing it very appropriately. Yeah. But from what you've described, it sounds like relatively you're looking like you're super duper into it.
Yeah. And I mean, to be honest, a part of me is.
Well, and absolutely. I'm not discounting that.
Yeah. It's music with lyrics I don't connect to, but I like the chords. I mean, it's very U2, and I like that.
And the melodies are always great. I mean, the people that write those songs are really good songwriters.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
It's interesting though that I think we think the same way in that like performing is just part of playing. Like the idea of just standing there and just playing and not putting any energy into like looking like I'm having a good time, whether or not I'm having a good time. that's part of the job is like you should look like you're having a good time, whether it's a church thing or a wedding thing or whatever. Like you should,
Yeah.
even if you're faking it 100%, like
Yeah.
you're part of your job.
Yeah.
It's just part of the job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we feel that same way. Well, it sounded like it went pretty good, and I think this is going to pay off dividends. I think pushing yourself like this, that's how you get better is by
Exactly.
getting outside of the boundaries.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So then the next day we had a gig together, the Petty Nicks Experience.
we sure did.
It was at Hoedown Hill.
Yes, which is it's in Windsor, Colorado. It's about an hour north, near Fort Collins, and it is a sledding area in the wintertime. So
it's like tubing and sledding, and they have like these magic carpet ride things that you take you back up the hill.
Right, and then they actually have snow machines for when the snow isn't that thick, because Colorado, it will snow, but that snow's not sticking around very long.
Right, especially on the plains.
Yeah, especially on the plains when you get up there. So it's like you'll get a good snow, but then it's gone in 2 days or whatever.
Yeah.
And so anyway, they had they're starting up a music festival, and they had this very large kind of parking lot. I bet it was a parking lot.
Yeah.
And boy, they went all out on the stage. Was deluxe.
They did. That was one of the biggest stages I've ever played on.
And boy, wasn't it great having room?
Yeah.
It was. I had not realized how much I was missing the. I think of it as vertical room, but the back and forth, upstage and downstage, and like really having room to like, it's not just, I'm at the back and then 2 steps I'm at the front.
Yeah.
I've got all this gradation of how I can be out of the way, or and we couldn't have been treated better as far as food.
Oh my gosh.
And
they had lunch and dinner both catered.
By the Boot Grill, which is at I-25 and Crossroads.
Highly recommended.
Highly recommended. I mean, they were doing it all outdoors and whatever, so I can only imagine how good the actual restaurant is, because it was.
They had what was the tuna?
Ahi tuna.
Ahi tuna on little skewers.
Yeah,
with a little sauce.
Yeah, with
gosh,
sauces and
so good.
The puree, whatever.
And they had homemade potato chips.
The homemade potato chips were, these were clearly potatoes that they had thinly sliced and then
by hand, because they were all different.
Fried and turned into potato chips, and they were just all, but they were like, I couldn't. I had to force myself to stop eating.
I know.
Like, I was like, if you keep eating these chips, you are going to really regret it. Because I was just like... and excellent burgers, and...
and then we had our own trailer, and the Long Run had their own trailer.
We played with the Long Run, so that's worth saying.
Right.
Yeah, but boy, I am here to report they treated us just incredibly nicely. It was a luxury experience as the band.
Yes.
And we played with the Long Run.
The Long Run, which I have not seen them play a show before, and I was really, really impressed.
Wildly impressed.
Yeah, they sound phenomenal. They're so tight. Their harmonies are great.
Phenomenal.
Their groove is great. Their show is great.
Yeah.
Their set was great. Yeah, I see why they are at the top. They deserve it. They are so good. So I reached out afterwards, and I told Mark Tripp and see that as well. I mean, and I also said it in person, but I was like, man, it sounded so polished, so great.
And they've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, not all the same guys, because they did have a couple guys. I was talking to them, and there's sort of like us. There's a few guys who are newer.
But Mark plays drums and sings at the same time, like Don Henley.
He does the Don Henley.
And man, that's so impressive.
Yeah, and he's so good.
He's so good at both.
And I finally met Steve Thomas, who is a big deal guitar player in the area, and he sort of does the... they trade off. They do a little less of a position thing. Not that I'm an Eagles expert. They're called The Long Run. They do Eagles music. And related stuff. They do, they open up with a Joe Walsh song. Joe Walsh was in the Eagles, but they open up with a solo Joe Walsh song. And Steve does a lot of the Joe Walsh stuff. But the two guitar players traded up a lot. Like, they weren't always being the one guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, one time a Felder solo and like Steve would do the Felder part, and then another time he'd do the Walsh part. We're divided up a little bit more. Anyway, phenomenal band, amazing sounding, tons of stuff on YouTube if you want to check that out. Cute story if I've never told it. When we got big deal, fancy New York City management, they were like, so we're signing, and is there anything we can do? Like, let's celebrate you signing with us and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, can you figure out some way for me to meet Joe Walsh, or like just have lunch with him, or like I just really want to meet Joe Walsh? And they were like, no problem, man, we'll get in touch with his people, blah blah blah. And then they came back and they were like, yeah, man, Joe wasn't into it, blah blah blah. And I was like, you never asked them. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you were just like gassing me up about like, but that's how much, that was my number one ask, was like, can I meet Joe Walsh? And so, obviously I'm a huge fan of that part of the Eagles. And gosh, I don't know. Those guys were just so great, and they were really nice, and they were really kind, and it was great sharing a bill with them.
Yeah.
It was a good show. We did get cut off early. Apparently it was outdoors and it was whatever, and there was apparently a noise complaint and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not thrilled with how I handled it, but I kept it relatively under wraps. I don't think it was too bad, but
It wasn't too bad.
okay. Yeah.
On the stage, at least. In the trailer, you were kind of raging.
Yeah. No, on stage. And I think we did a good job. And I think once we figured out that we needed to stop because it was very confusing what was going on. And then because the PA was turned off because of the noise complaint, no one could say anything. So we just had to like wave and do our best to act like this was on purpose and, whatever. I was very impressed at how everybody kind of, walked up to the front of the stage and waved and thank you, and like kind of smoothed it over the best we could. And I'm sure no one had planned for that to happen. I mean, stuff's just going to happen,
Yeah.
and you deal with it. But it was a good crowd. I mean, might have been 2,000. I mean, Vic might have been right on that.
Yeah.
Might have been about 2,000 people in
Yeah.
the crowd. But gosh, I got to thank all of them for having us, and that was just such a lovely day. We had to sound check super early, so we were like hanging out with the band all day long. But they had the food and they had everything. So really, really nice day. Then Saturday.
Oh, no, it's not you, it's me. I woke up in the morning thinking, I don't have to be anywhere right now. I just have a gig tonight. And then I was like, wait a minute. I also have 2 classes to co-host.
Yes.
And a lesson to teach. Like,
Yeah.
it kind of like, it was like one at a time. Like, I knew that these things were all coming. I'd seen them all on my calendar, but somehow I never put together that they were all happening on, like, that this coming Saturday was the same Saturday for all of them.
Oh, right.
I don't know how. It's just...
That happens to me. I wake up and I
balls.
look at the calendar and I was like, oh no, all those things are on the same day.
Yeah. And, so I was supposed to be co-hosting a class at Performance High from 12 to 2, also from 2 to 4, also teaching a lesson at 11:45 to 12:30, also showing up to the Deb gig or leaving at about 1:30 or 2.
Diamond Empire Band.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
A wedding gig.
Yeah.
And I was just like, how did I triple book myself? This is not like me. But I worked it out. I kind of got, like, I left you to your own devices for the class. I dipped out of the class with Kelsey to do a delayed lesson with that student. And then I got it all worked out. But, man, I'm just glad. I'm glad this busy schedule's over.
Yeah. So how was the gig after that? Because that was the big thing that day.
Not the best. The clients danced and sang and had fun. So there's that. It was my roughest gig, my roughest Diamond Empire gig to date, for sure. Again, partly because I had less prep time than I've had. And also because my brain was not working. So there was one time I found my hand on the wrong string, so I was 4th off. I started, do you want to be, are you going to be my girl?
Yeah.
In the key of D instead of the key of A. And then the band came in and I was like, oh, here we go, back down to A.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember exactly what the line was. And I know it's do, 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 but I couldn't remember exactly what it was. Same thing with another bass line I start, like higher and higher, Jackie Wilson. I had it written down, but I just like, I couldn't get my brain to execute. So, and then there was one song, I don't remember which one, Superstition. Something super easy where 3 times during the song I forgot what key it was in. I would move my hand a fret or two to hit another note, and I'd be like, "Oh, where's home base? What key are we in?" Like just complete brain farts, like start to finish on this gig. And I felt really embarrassed, and I wasn't the only one, but I don't know. It was a bummer.
I think you were just overloaded and you had a rush around day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, of course, that band doesn't rehearse.
Yeah.
So.
And there was a new lead singer on that gig who didn't have very many gigs under their belt at all. Like, not just wedding gigs, but like gigs.
Yeah.
And had never done a situation like this. And was given the song list like 5 days before, which is normal. But this person didn't have the wedding rep under their belt.
Right. And it was a decent number of songs that probably nobody had under their belt. I mean, I wouldn't say a ton.
A few, yeah. There were some odd
but
requests.
Even a few, like it's so different brushing up on September by Earth, Wind, and Fire versus this is a whole new song you haven't played before. That's, because there's so many songs that are in the cover repertoire and like, I couldn't sit down and play it right now, but like if I look at it again, I'll be like, oh yeah, I have played it over and over again for 30 years. But like, as you were saying, the singer in this case just didn't have that experience of like covering those kind of classics. And then on top of that, there were a couple wild cards in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
well, the singer, one of the two singers. So the other singer.
Of course, one of the two singers.
The other singer is extremely experienced. She cued every section. She's great. She was a master. So she held it together.
Yeah, those gigs are just going to be that way. I mean, it is very hard getting that set list so soon to the show because you've got other stuff in your schedule. I mean, you carved time knowing you were going to get it, and you needed it. But at the same time, that's rough. But you got through it.
I got through it.
Another learning experience and another.
Yes, indeed.
I mean, I hate to say it that way. It's just more miles on the car.
Yeah, totally. And then the next day was the Youth and Acoustic Showcase for Performance High. So we went up to the Muse, or I went up to the Muse and ran sound and emceed.
Yeah.
That. So.
And you didn't really tell me much about how it went.
Oh, it went great.
Yeah?
It went great, yeah. Oh, the most, gosh, I mean, it's so lovely. We had a lot of people performing for the first time.
Yeah.
And, everybody has nerves, but as always, they rose to the challenge. I think one guy maybe would say he didn't rise to the challenge. I think my intel tells me that he's high often and like all the time and might not have been high or as high for this performance.
Oh.
So I think the nerves really got the best of him because he was much more present than normal. We'll see.
That's funny.
I had a student who it was her first time singing a song in front of anyone but me, and her husband, who's a musician.
Yeah.
And she did great. She asked for feedback today in the lesson, and I was like, honestly.
Yeah,
you
nothing to report.
You knocked it out of the park for your first performance. You were nervous, and you didn't perform, but like for what you should be aiming for your very first performance, all like 100%. So really proud of her.
I oftentimes think how lucky I am that I got my first performances and first lessons in performing when I was too young to know any better or take any real psychological hit. Like having to, when you're a kid, you're just, there's an invincibility there, but like having to do your first performance as an adult in your 20s or 30s, that's a whole different, so I really respect people who are jumping in.
Yeah. And then another really wonderful thing about that showcase was we had a client come to check us out at, his name is Igor.
Okay.
Can't remember his last name. It's very complicated. Like, it's a Ukrainian name, actually.
Oh, okay.
He's from Ukraine.
Wow.
Has been here for a long time, though. Came here as a boy. But he was checking out a lot of different music schools. And so he was doing his research and he came to check out our showcase. I talked to him a bit before and I talked to him a bit after. And when we talked before and I just was like asking about himself and telling him about Performance High. And then we did the showcase and then he came up to me afterwards with kind of like a more open look on his face.
Oh.
He was like, yeah, I'm going to get started with you guys. Like you have a really good vibe. I can tell that people like it here. I'm ready to get started. And I was like, oh my gosh. Awesome.
That is a different aspect of the showcases that I'd never considered. But sort of like you were saying, Mannequin does, where they have rehearsals, but those rehearsals can be open to clients.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing I haven't thought of showcases is like, if you're not sure what we do here, you can come to a showcase and see what we do here.
Yeah.
And get a sense of the vibe and everybody's feeling and and then after that Sunday night we had my good friend Lexi Kearns over.
Your good friend.
For dinner. Yeah.
your good 21-year-old friend.
Yeah. Lexi was a student of mine and Kristen Henry's. So she was a Performance High person. She did a ton of showcases. I mean, she did a ton of them when she was 16, 17, 18. And we've just kind of, I mean, she worked for me a little bit doing a couple things and she used to babysit Shanti.
Right.
And we just have had a good relationship. We are very similar people. So, but we had her over for dinner and just caught up on what's been going on with her. She's amazing. She's in the medical field, certified nurse, but now she's going into a different, people in the medical field, they like their acronyms. It is.
That's right. So if you ever have a TBI, and I'm like, you mean if I ever have a traumatic brain injury?
Yeah.
Like that's what you're telling to me right now?
Yeah, it's hard to remember. You got to sort out all the alphabet soup of, but it's what they do every day. It would be like me if I got into a serious discussion about engineering. People would be like, I don't even know what you're saying. And I'd be like, well, of course, but
compressor, limiter.
Yeah, the flux capacitor. Anyway, yeah, it was lovely seeing Lexi, and she's just doing so well for herself, and becoming a young adult.
Yes.
It's kind of wild seeing someone that you knew as a kid.
Yeah.
I'm sure most people have had that experience, but it's funny for me being like, she's catching us up on what's going on, and it's like, wow, you're a little adult now.
Making adult decisions, suffering adult consequences. Grinding through the early adulthood, work and you don't get the big rewards quite yet, and
finding where you need to be and want to be, and such a hard work. It really also really made me aware, hearing about somebody's experience as a healthcare worker. What amazing sacrifices those people make, and how they make. I mean, those people are angels in a sense, if you want to say it that way. And man, they do not get compensated fairly, and they do more than they're asked, and they make it happen. And we are all so lucky that there are people in the world who are willing to sacrifice the way those people do. By the way, one of our sponsors this week, healthcare workers.
Real? All of them?
All of them. Yeah, they all chipped in.
Okay.
I felt a little bad cashing the check. I mean, it seems like something I should do. It seems like something I should have done for charity, but it was a big check, and I just, you know what? We will just see you next week, and we're going to hear about a bunch of camping. As always, we are sponsored by Performance High.
Voice and Music Studio.
Thank you guys again. We will see you soon.
See ya.
Bye.